Hello again. Welcome and welcome back. My name is Eric. This channel is called Report and Opine. I am here with a Wednesday update. It is February 26th, 2020. And last Wednesday, I spoke a little bit about some of the crooked, corrupt media personalities that are driving people crazy. And naturally, I just can't let it go. So this is the sequel. We did have another dumpster fire Democratic debate on the television last night, and we will get to them on Sunday. They're completely awful as well, perhaps the only people more awful than the news personalities I'm about to talk about, but they are one big happy family, right? So before I break it down into the individuals, I do think that ABC as a whole needs to be fired. They need to be fired. It's incredible how corrupt they are. There was a brand new Project Veritas expose on them. I haven't even had a chance to look into it. I haven't read anything about it, but this list is so long that we can do it without it. Of course, 6 or 8 months ago, they exposed Amy Robach for when she was complaining about having to squash the Jeffrey Epstein story. But they also, back in October of 2019, when Donald Trump pulled troops out of Syria, they ran footage of a military gun show in Kentucky claiming that it was a Syrian battlefield of Turkish soldiers bombing Kurdish civilians. Now, if Barack Obama had pulled troops out of Syria, they would have called him a saint. And nobody was talking about the Kurds until they thought that maybe they could put some blood on Donald Trump's hands by claiming that him pulling the troops out of Syria, killed millions of Kurdish civilians. So they're just looking for anything to pin on this man. Even Tulsi Gabbard, who is Little Miss No Wars Ever, says, I wouldn't have done it that way. So these are the people we're dealing with, all right? And George Stephanopoulos of ABC, he's the chief anchor. His long list of crooked things goes back many years. He was a Bill Clinton staffer in 92, 96. He also donated to the Clinton Foundation in 2012, 2013, and 2014 after going on record saying that nobody donates to the Clinton Foundation without expecting a favor. And when he was called out on it, he said it was a mistake. He also dined with Jeffrey Epstein and some other celebrity personalities, most notably Woody Allen, of all people. Chelsea Handler was also there, by the way. But he went to a dinner, a very exclusive dinner at Epstein's townhouse here in New York when he got out of jail the first time, and then said, oh, that was a mistake also. He was also caught up in a crooked commercial residential real estate deal back in the 90s as well. And then he goes on television however many nights a week and says that he's a news personality, believe me. No, I'm all right, George. It's crazy how these people are able to keep these jobs, but whatever, this is the world we live in. Then we've also got Mica and Joe from MSNBC. They're completely crooked as well. Joe, I think, still claims to be a Republican, because when he says Orange Man bad, you know that it's real because he's not a Democrat like the rest of them. Whatever, you're full of it. You know that there's more money in Orange Man bad for some strange reason than actually holding some sort of principled position. I mean, you're on your third wife. You guys pre-tape your holiday shows and then run it as though it's real time. Back in 2017, they pre-taped their day after Thanksgiving show, laid it on so thick. Ooh, I'm stuffed. How about that football game yesterday? And it's like, dude, we can see through it. You guys are hacks, and you think we're all stupid. They also record their television show from their tax haven out in Florida while pretending that they're here in New York, or out in Washington, D.C. or whatever. But nobody seems to care. They just go on there and do their Orange Man bad thing every single morning. Then we've got Rachel Maddow, Pretty Ricky Maddow, also from MSNBC, who, of course, has been screeching Russia for at least the past 3 years, claiming that everybody is an agent of the Russians, most notably the folks over at One American News sued her for her calling them an agent of the Russians, and she actually won that lawsuit by saying, hey, this isn't real news programming. She also trotted out now convicted extortionist Michael Avenatti back in the Kavanaugh days because she thought that he would help her score some points against Kavanaugh and eventually Trump, of course. She also trotted out Lev Parnas, who is now on trial for some weird fraud scheme that he's into in the final days of the impeachment push, when they were looking for any little bits of spaghetti to continue to throw at the wall. So think about that for a second. She trotted out 2 criminals, one convicted, one currently on trial, because that is a better look than just saying Donald Trump is really not that bad. 2 criminals rather than just saying, maybe we'll deal with it and we won't die. This is not going to be the end of the world. That's how far she is from reality. Then we've got Chuck Todd, who I will give a little bit of credit because he despises Bernie almost as much as I do. But besides that, he's a complete and total hack. He, brings on some Republican guests and then won't let them get a word in edgewise, literally pointing the finger and screaming at them. But more importantly, his wife is a longtime Democratic operative, all right? So she worked for one of the senators up in Washington State, the mayor of Washington, D.C., along with a long list of other people. I think Tim Kaine, who was, of course, Hillary Clinton's running mate. And then he says, well, we're separate people. Of course you're separate people, but you're married. You're working towards the same goal, all right? So we're not going to believe you for 1 second when you say, this is Meet the Press and I'm just here to shoot it straight. No way, Chuck. Then we've got Brian Williams, old school liar. He's been telling the same lie for many years and then finally got called out on it and said, I misremembered. What? Dude, you told a lie multiple times about how in 2003 you were in Iraq and you were in a helicopter that was shot by an RPG and forced to land. Now, I'm sure if you had it your way, you would have just said, oh my God, we were in a war zone and I died in a helicopter crash, but that would have been too obvious because you didn't actually die. He told that story for years, finally got called out on it and said, I misremembered. And these people are all still on TV. Astonishing. Then we got Wolf Blitzer, who's not the worst among them. But it's pretty funny because he's literally the worst Jeopardy contestant ever. At least the worst celebrity Jeopardy contestant ever. Probably out of all of them. I mean, the celebrities I'm sure are worse than the regular contestants. But he finished with what? Negative 4,600, negative 4,800, something like that. It's like, Wolf, put the buzzer down. You have no idea what you're talking about. But you go on TV every day also and claim to know about the world around you. I don't believe it. You're also famous for having Bernie Sanders, creepy old socialist himself, calling you Jake multiple times in the same interview. I saw you good for sort of standing up for yourself and saying, my name's Wolf, not Jake, but Bernie doesn't know what's going on. You guys are just 2 awful old white-haired men who have no idea about the world around you. Moving on, grandstander extraordinaire, little baby, Dear Diary Jim Acosta, who, this list is really long, so we're only going to touch on a couple things, but he, of course, wrote his Orange Man Bad book, I think is actually called Enemy of the People, Scary Time to Tell the Truth, so you have Trump to thank for that title, and yes, it is a very scary time to tell the truth, Jim, but you're living in delusion, so there's that. He also, more recently, went all the way to India to call Trump out on Russia Collusion 2.0, and Trump told him he should be ashamed of himself, which is true. He totally should be. He's a complete and total hack. He also tried to question Trump on one of his new appointees to the national security team or something like that, saying he's not fit for the position, which is just kind of ironic because the guy is gay, and I thought everybody on the left loves identity politics, so that they should really just be clapping like seals for a gay appointee, but they just won't do it. They won't give Trump one little inkling of credit. He also, of course, got into that little fight with the White House staffer back in November or whatever it was, when he was talking about the migrant caravan, and Trump said, Jim, shut up. Sit down, pass the mic. He wouldn't give the mic up and got into a little kerfuffle with the White House aide. And then went to the border in Texas where there's a big giant wall and said, not much to see here. It's very tranquil. It's like, yeah, Jim, that's because the wall works. And that was the moment he was turned into the Dear Diary meme. Little baby Jim Acosta. I mean, grandstander of all grandstanders, so awful that other awful journalists can't stand him. Then we've got Anderson Cooper, of course, born into the famous Vanderbilt family, who's not the worst among them, but this is an awful list, so that's not saying much. But he, of course, went to bat for crooked Joe Biden in one of the Democratic debates, talking about, well, there's no evidence of wrongdoing, so, just wanted to put that out there that Joe Biden's okay in my book. What, dude? But I will give him a little bit of credit for almost trying to push back on some of Bernie's mathematical malfeasance in a very recent interview. So when it's all said and done, I guess Anderson's not the worst. Him and Wolf Blitzer are battling for not the absolute worst, but this is still an awful group of people to be mentioned alongside of. And he's just a complete media elitist born into a millionaire family, never had to work, so I guess good on him for actually keeping a job for a little bit, right? He is also pushing this weird gay agenda with Don Lemon, which sort of annoys me, but what annoys me worse is the fact that his stupid face pops up on the CNN advertisements. When I do find myself on CNN.com, his face pops up with a little cup of coffee talking about, do you want me to summarize the news for you? No, Anderson, I don't. I'll find it myself. Thank you. Last but not least, we have Donna Brazile, who is, of course, famous for forwarding Hillary Clinton debate questions back in 2016, and then later selling Hillary down the river in her book, talking about how crooked Hillary was and how she bought the whole DNC. So again, half credit. She now works for Fox News because they're willing to take anybody who hates Hillary Clinton, and they can see a little bit of new viewership opening up with the complete and total demise of the loony leftist media going on over there. And they're like, all right, we're going to make one step a little bit towards the center and take on Donna Brazile because, hey, she hates Hillary also. So that's it. That's all of them. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure there's plenty more out there, but that's it for the sequel. Maybe there'll be a trilogy. We shall see. Please check back every Wednesday night, every Sunday night, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening.